Welcome. We are so excited to have an overflowing room full of fans of the great Richard Thaler and the great Alex Imas. I have the honor of doing our intros. So let me just start by saying, first of all, for those of you who are new to this book, where have you been? Because the original version came out in 1992 and is amazing. In fact, I will say that this version of the book is one that changed my life. I read it as a first-year graduate student as the reason I became a behavioral scientist. So really excited to be celebrating the 2025 version of the book. We're going to talk about what's different, what's changed, and all sorts of other fun things. Let me do a quick intro, reading formally from the bios of our amazing guests of honor after just saying Angela Duckworth here is the one who instructed you on where to sit. She is the co-director of the Behavior Change for Good initiative along with me. I'm Katy Milkman. We're really happy to have you here. But our guests of honor are Richard Thaler and Alex Imas. And Richard is the Charles R. Walgreen Distinguished Service Professor of Behavioral Science and Economics, Emeritus at the University of Chicago Booth School of Business. Don't boo, we love Booth too, even if we are Wharton. He's the 2017 recipient of the Nobel Prize in Economic Sciences. He is a best-selling author of many books, Nudge and Misbehaving being among them, this soon to be on that list, I expect. He's one of the co-founders of the field of behavioral economics, and we are very excited to have him. So let's give him a quick round of applause. Alex has not won the Nobel Prize yet, but is also awesome. He's a professor of behavioral science and economics at the University of Chicago Booth School of Business, and he has won lots of other prestigious awards for young scholars. The Nobel Prize is coming, Alex. We're counting on it. So he has won a Alfred P. Sloan Research Fellowship, the Review of Financial Studies Rising Scholar Award, the New Investigator Award from the Behavioral Science and Policy Association, and the Einhorn New Investigator Award from the Society for Judgment and Decision Making. So he's racking up the prizes too. Alex is the co-author with Richard of this newly updated edition of The Winner's Curse, Paradoxes and Anomalies of Economic Life, which updates Richard's classic book on behavioral economics. So what we're going to do today is we're going to sit with them for about 45 minutes of interview with prepared questions, and then we'll open it up to the audience for your own questions for about 10 to 15 minutes. Oh, thank you, Angela. Though hopefully everybody grabbed the QR code for our newsletter so you can find out about other fun events. I am also tasked with telling you that we will be posting a recording of this event on our YouTube channel. And so by default, because we love defaults, if you ask a question during the Q&A, you are agreeing to potentially be included in a posted recording. So keep that in mind. And without further ado, let me pass the baton to Angela to kick off the Q&A.
Awesome. Okay, so we are going to begin with the backstory, and this question is for you, Richard. So what is the origin story of this edition of The Winner's Curse? I think you write about this in the opening pages, but how did this book come to be?
Well, thank you, you two, for inviting us. You can't talk about this book without talking about the old one. And the origin story is I spent 3 years of my life visiting with Danny Kahneman, and the middle one, 1984-85, I was in Vancouver. I came back to Cornell where I was teaching, and Danny had told me at some point, just in casual conversation, that you get to some point in your life where you can no longer be called promising. And he says, I don't know, around 40. So I was 40.
I'm 40.
Yeah. So I go back to Cornell, and now I'm not promising anymore. And what am I going to do? And there was a new journal that was created that was about to start publishing, I think in '87, called the Journal of Economic Perspectives. And the idea was quite original, which was to have economists write articles that people could understand, non-specialists. And there was a thought that there might be some recurring features in every issue. And a friend of mine, Hal Varian, who became the chief economist at Google, he and I hatched the idea of a column on anomalies. And so I started writing these columns.
And anomalies of what sort?
Well, it's an economics journal. So I wonder what.
Yeah.
So, yes. So, what is an anomaly? Excellent question.
Thank you, Richard.
For economics, economists assume and kind of take for granted that these assumptions are true, that the people in their models, and they don't really call them people, they call them agents, that these agents are really smart as the smartest economist, or possibly even as smart as the smartest economist thinks he is. No, I don't have anybody particularly in mind. Selfish, don't care about anybody else. Unemotional, no self-control problems. So just the opposite of the people psychologists like you would study. And so the columns, each one tried to point to evidence, either from experiments or from archival data, that those assumptions were violated, that there were a set of facts that were difficult, if not impossible, to explain while retaining those assumptions. And as for this one, the book was going to go out of print for some reason. The publisher asked me if I wanted to freshen it up. Stupidly, I got a more ambitious idea, which was to say, gee, how have these things held up? Obviously, that was going to be a lot of work, so I invented Alex.
Well, you hired Alex at the University of Chicago. So yeah, when I got to University of Chicago about the same year I arrived, basically, 2020, I got a call from Richard, and he said, well, you know, The Winner's Curse has gone out of print. And The Winner's Curse, the original one, was basically most of the anomalies that Richard had written in a book. And it's been since 1992. I was asked to potentially update this book. Do you want to work with me on it? It'll be quick, like 6 months or so. This was 2020, by the way. So we started thinking about what that might look like to be a bit more ambitious. So it's been 30 years, more than 30 years. There's been a lot of research in behavioral economics. Behavioral economics has gone from essentially, you know, you wouldn't even call it a subfield. It was a very small part of economics to being a very established part of economics. Almost every top department has behavioral economics on the faculty. Top journals are publishing behavioral economic papers. And kind of how has the research kind of progressed since the original book? So essentially what we decided was that the way that we were going to do it was every single chapter at its core was going to be the original anomalies column. That's the then part. And then the now part is essentially the 30 years since. So every single chapter is the 30 years of research that has happened since. And what we kind of emphasize in this edition, which is about 2/3 new, that's why it took quite a long time, is the fact that the original anomalies columns, a lot of them were based on experiments with college students at low stakes. And a lot of the pushback against behavioral economics at the time was to say, look, we are economists, we care about markets, we care about people who are, you know, spending millions of dollars potentially. They're very, very smart. Your college students, you know, they don't matter. It doesn't matter if they're making mistakes. Economic agents don't make mistakes. So what has happened for 30 years is essentially behavioral economists have gotten very, very good data sets of real investors, CEOs, professional athletes, and showed that, hey, actually, they do. They make almost the same mistakes as the college students. With the observational data sets, they've also ran field experiments, something that Katy and Angela do a very good job with, is essentially showing like, look, people making consequential big decisions in their lives, they're still making mistakes. So that's kind of what the update has shown is that, look, these anomalies not only have internal validity, and we can speak more about that, but they have external validity in the sense that they matter for economics. And this is why behavioral economics has become such an important field.
I love that. So just to give you a preview of how we're going to structure this, in addition, now we've sort of covered what's the structure of the book, we're going to dive in to some of those anomalies and ask you to explain, because that's the fun of the book, and I think it'll be the fun for the audience. So let me jump in and just say, I'm going to ask Richard another question. The book is called The Winner's Curse, so it feels like our first thing to dive into should be, could you tell us a little bit about what that is and why it gets the naming rights?
Yeah, so why it gets the naming rights is just because it's a cool name. Behavioral economics anomalies, right?
We actually were close to doing that.
Not really. The then guy vetoed that. So anyway, I picked the title of the original book as one of the chapters, exactly because it's cool. But the idea is also interesting and kind of a nice way to start. So the idea is, if we have an auction, let's suppose we had a jar of jelly beans up here, and we say the jelly beans are worth 25 cents each. You can bid for the rights, not for the jelly beans, but for that value, 25 cents times N jelly beans. The winner gets paid that amount of money and gives us what they bid. What's going to happen? The average bid will be less. Suppose the correct price is $100. The average bid will be considerably less, say $50, but the winning bid will be more than $100. So, which means the winner is cursed. Cursed in the sense that they bought something and they paid too much. Now, this anomaly was not discovered by economists or psychologists, nor in the laboratory. It was discovered by engineers at a big oil company, Atlantic Richfield, ARCO, and they were auctioning off the rights to drill for oil in what we insist on continuing to call the Gulf of Mexico. And what they found was they would make lots of bids, they would win a few of them, they would start drilling, and they were systematically disappointed by the amount of oil they would find. And they were thinking, well, are we lousy geologists or drillers or what? And what they figured out was this is the essential insight, which is the winner of the auction is not picked at random. The winner is the one who bid the most. Who's going to be the one that bids the most? Maybe the one with the most optimistic forecast of how many jelly beans there are or how much oil is in the ground. So that's the winner's curse.
It is an excellent name.
Now, one of the things I like about the way you structure the book is you have a version of the original essay, I think not verbatim, right? But then you have an update.
Pretty much.
And then you have a kind of, to use a Dan economism, sort of a one-liner for economists and a one-liner for the rest of us. So what would be the one-liner for what are the practical consequences for, for example, the pedestrians in the audience who would find that cool, but also what do I do with it?
Wait a minute, are you quizzing us on whether we remember the one-liners?
You can come up with a different one-liner, but what would be the practical implications of the winner's curse?
Well, the winner's curse is all about the fact that you're actually bidding against other people. And the more other people are in there, you have to kind of think about, if I'm the person who wins, what does that mean? Right? That means that I'm too optimistic. And if there's a lot of people, that I'm really optimistic in order to win. So we talk about this a lot in the update. The update's actually about the idea that a lot of these sorts of strategic situations when you're bidding or competing against other people, the biggest bias is that people do not take into account the fact that other people are probably just as smart as you.
So if you're at Sotheby's and everybody claps when you get the winning bid,
Yeah,
you're the loser.
Should go to the bathroom and cry.
Let me give you, I'll give you a concrete example. There was a period during the sort of post-COVID frothy stock market where there was a new financial thing created called a SPAC, Special Purpose Acquisition Company. And what they would do is raise a pot of money and then go buy something. And somebody asked me to be on the board of one of these. And it's COVID. What else is, so I figured, why not? This will be interesting. And actually, they wanted to buy a sports team. So Billy Beane was on the board of this as well. And then the sports team turned us down. Because you had to, when you make the deal, you have to go public. And the team decided they didn't want a public company. So we started looking for something else to buy. And there were a lot of these SPACs. And sometimes people would start, asking SPACs, hey, you want to buy us? And I proposed a rule for the SPAC, which is we only deal with a company that gives us exclusivity. Because
you didn't want to be the cursed winner.
I didn't want to be a curse.
Wait, so then what happened? Did you make a lot of money?
What happened is we've made a bid that was accepted for a company that I think would have been a very good deal. Then the stock market crashed. And the company decided, we decided we weren't willing to pay that price anymore. And they decided they weren't willing to accept the lower one. So we gave the investors back all their money.
But
we didn't lose their money.
Didn't lose their money.
Right.
Zero is better than negative.
Can I ask them the now and later question? Okay, so Katy and I are both very interested, as you know, in the topic of choosing now or later, right? Choices that were down in the present versus the future. So Richard, could you give us the one-liner, the wiki, the TLDR on that chapter? Okay, it is a quiz. Whatever you remember from the original contents of that seminal essay, and then I was going to ask Alex to give us a contemporary update.
Yeah, right. So one of the assumptions of rational economic agents is that they evaluate time in the right way. And what we know is instead people treat now very differently than later, even if later is tomorrow. And there's an old story of mine about having a dinner party and putting out a bowl of cashews, and people started devouring the cashews, and I realized our appetites were at risk, and I went and hid the cashews. And so why is that? Is because people thanked me. Oh, thank God you got rid of those cashews. We were going to eat all those cashews, and there was a lot of good food coming. So we often do things in the moment that we later regret. They can be big or small. And economists assume that we don't have this problem, but we do.
Update, Alex?
Well, the original experiments were either stories or
You can't really beat stories.
they're good stories. They're good stories, but they were like college experiments with college students. College students made decisions over time. So they said, do you want $10 now or do you want to wait for $15? And a lot of college students said, I want $10 now. And then they were dynamically inconsistent in a similar way. A lot of the new updates are about essentially thinking about like how do potentially firms use these sort of insights. So one of my favorite papers in the update is a paper called Paying Not to Go to the Gym. And the paper is essentially showing that, look, you can buy a daily gym membership. So essentially you want to go to the gym, you spend like, $10 or something like that, go in, work out, or you can buy a yearly membership. So which is considerably more expensive. So let's say $300. So Stefano Della Vigna and Ulrike Malmendier, they got gym data from a large gym, and they basically looked at what did people do. So essentially, they, again, could just go every single day, or they could buy a yearly membership, and then they could calculate, look, given how many times people actually went to the gym, was it worth it for them to buy a yearly membership? The yearly membership was much more expensive than going 2 or 3 times. And it turns out, I think the average amount, and this is not a quiz, was under 10 a year.
Under 10 visits.
Under 10 visits, exactly, which is like monstrously smaller. Like they basically could have saved tons of money. And the really interesting part about it is that people just kept buying it. It's not like, look, for 1 year I did it, I realized, look, I thought I was going to go 365 days a year, including Christmas and New Year's, but I didn't, and I only went 3 times. Next year, you know what I'm going to do? I'm not going to do that again.
Yeah, now there's a seasonal pattern to that, which reflects Katy's research. When do people make resolutions? On New Year's, what do they resolve? Well, they realize they've gained 10 pounds going to holiday parties and eating too much, so they're going to go to the gym. So they join a gym. And so that's what you see. And yeah, they pay not to go to they go a lot in January. You don't want to go to a gym the first 2 weeks of January. It's going to be really crowded. Wait till they've gotten that out of their system, then go all the rest of the time. But people do the opposite.
But also, I think part of they have 2 papers. One of the papers was documenting this effect. The other one is that why do people do it again? And they do it as a sort of a commitment device to say, look, at least I went 10 times. If I didn't get the yearly membership, if I had to pay $10 every single time I'd go, I'm not going to go at all because, you wake up in the morning, I really want to work out, but I really don't want to spend that $10 and it's raining and I have to put all my stuff in the bag. At least with the yearly membership, there's a sunk cost fallacy, which I'm happy to talk about. I've already paid the money. I need to get my money's worth. And that's a bit of a motivation to at least go 10 times. So it's kind of this interplay between, look, people do have self-control problems. They buy these memberships in order to solve those self-control problems, but it costs a lot of money in order to do that.
You have a special request for one little tidbit from the chapter on now versus later, which is, could you tell us about the special exception, the one thing that's positive that we actually prefer to have to wait to get, as opposed to wanting right now and craving instant gratification on?
It's the opportunity to speak at Wharton with Katy and Angela.
Coveted, yeah.
Or a kiss from a movie star. So, yeah, our friend George Lowenstein ran an experiment back in the day, and he asked people, how much would you be willing to pay for whatever, a glass of fine wine today or next week or next month, or when would you want to have it? And the kiss from a movie star, well, most things you want it now. Kiss from a movie star you want in a few days, because he calls it savoring. So you want to think about it for a while, how nice it's going to be.
But there's the opposite is dread from the same paper. So usually you want to put off bad things, but in the paper he has the example of an electric shock. When do you want to get electric shocked? People want to get it over with right now. So it's this idea of anticipatory utility that, you get positive utility from putting off things that you could dream about and whatever you want to do about it. Or
brag about it.
Brag about it. Or you essentially, with an electric shock, you don't want to be thinking about it every single day. Like, oh my God, I'm going to get an electric shock tomorrow. Just give it to me right now and, get it over with.
As an aside, I asked ChatGPT, and I know this is not directly germane to the winner's curse, but apparently both Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt have dental veneers. I know that has nothing to do with
What
any
the
lessons.
hell? And
Don't you find that interesting? I was like, thank
And-
God there's ChatGPT. It's amazing.
Was that the
That
prompt?
was
Like, do they
not-
have
I just
veneers?
asked.
that was not
I
my
asked.
reaction, you know?
Well, I don't know what you thought, but I
All
thought
right.
that was. I was
Please
surprised.
warn any further questions that chat wrote.
No more questions or
know,
We're
That
going
was a
from low
comment.
brow to highbrow because you have to ask
This
about
is
the
medium
Economist.
brow. The Economist magazine recently published what they called an economist guide to big life decisions. So maybe not as great an idea as the anomalies column, but I thought that was very, very clickbaity. Their first and most emphatic recommendation for anyone looking to improve their life outcomes was to move, to relocate to a place where there is greater economic opportunity. Now, they mentioned that economists are perennially puzzled about why people don't move more often than they do, more often than they should. And I wondered, Richard, if you could start us off with a brief discussion of the status quo bias, and if either of you has an antidote to status quo bias, I'd love to hear that.
Absolutely. It's funny. I was talking to my old friend Katy a bit earlier, and this topic came up. So status quo bias is the tendency to just keep doing what you're doing. And you've all done it staring at the television and, either a regular show and you start watching What's Next, or the modern version of binging, and you've now watched 5 episodes of Breaking Bad.
And now with infinite scroll, you could just sit there forever.
Forever, right. So that's the status quo bias, is the tendency to keep doing what you're doing. The fact that people stay in godforsaken places because they were born there is an example. And there are examples in every aspect of life. The story I was telling Kate, I'm involved with a asset management firm, and we hired somebody who's going to be working in all parts of the firm. And I said, here's my secret mission to you. And I guess now I'm tipping everybody off.
Yeah.
When you go around, ask people how we do something, and then say, why do we do it that way? And I just want to, that's like a little poke at status quo bias. And if the answer is because that's the way we've always done it, F.
Steve Levitt has a really nice paper on, I think, attempting to solve it in some ways. He basically ran this large field experiment where he told people, look, this is an experiment. So some people were told this, some people weren't. If you have an important decision, flip a coin. And he didn't force them to follow the coin, but some people did. And that treatment group, the ones that instead of saying look, I've been born here, I have all my friends, the weird bar I go to's here. Instead, they flipped a coin. I don't know how many, major life decisions were in there, but that group was significantly happier than the ones that weren't flipping coins. And the reason for that, in his paper, shows is that the tendency that people have when they're making an important decision is stick to the status quo. And the fact that there's a 50% chance that you would do something else just pushes people over the edge and they become happier. So I think even having a very simple device like that look, maybe I should move, get a coin out and, move to Arkansas.
So I know this is not a quiz, but I recently read that paper in detail, and there was only one life decision where when people flipped the coin and they were told, if it lands on heads, go do it, right? And if it lands on tails, go. The only decision, there was getting my hair recolored, breaking up with my boyfriend, changing jobs. The only decision was moving, and there was no significant effect on moving of flipping the coin. So
The status quo bias is
status quo bias
is
very
just
is very
really
strong.
strong.
My recollection is also that in that paper, it didn't affect your happiness unless it was a big decision.
It was moderated by
Right.
life decision.
Right.
Yeah. So,
So
for the bigger decision, I
That's
think
where
it
we
was
want.
like-
That's where we need
Yeah.
the push and the little
I like
decisions.
this
that-
model where you guys answer the questions. and then,
We get to ask
that's
them and
good.
answer
Keep
them.
that up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
maybe we
that's
could just
good.
split.
That's good.
You want me-
This will
I'm
be
gonna
better.
take
This
this.
is Katy's
I'm gonna take. Okay. All right. I'm gonna cold call Alex on this. This is a quiz. This is the hardest question we've got.
Tough,
Trying to
Yeah,
remember
notes.
our
You
own
guys
book.
didn't show up with any notes or anything.
How am I
You are
gonna?
welcome to tap your
Wait, I can get the
collaborator if you need
book.
Yeah, look it up.
Okay, so this one's hard because it's hard to explain. So one of the most interesting chapters I think in the book is about, which was originally written with Matthew Rabin. It's about the idea of being careful before you call something risk aversion. And lots of the time we would turn down an opportunity that involves some risk that's low stakes, right? And I think you use the example in the book of a 50% chance of winning $110 versus a 50% chance of losing $100. A lot of people might turn that down. And we might say, well, they're just risk averse. They don't like the looks of that. But what's really interesting is that you're able to show in this chapter that this actually can't be called risk aversion in any realistic version of a model of human behavior. Could you explain why that is? See, this is a hard one to explain, but
So
it's
I
a
teach
really
this to my
interesting one.
students all the time. So
I knew you were
I wish I
up
had a
to it.
board. It's much better with a board.
I don't think we can do that.
So
Imagine a curve.
So economists have something called utility. This is the way that they measure how happy a person is, how unhappy they are. And you have a utility function that says, look, here's the input. This is how happy this person is. And the way that economists model risk aversion is through the fact that that utility function, it goes up, so more is better. You want more money rather than less money. But it kind of slows down, it's concave. What does that imply? Why is that called risk aversion? If you actually draw how much utility you would get because of this curvature from a lottery between two options versus the expected value of that same lottery, the expected value getting it for sure is higher on that curve than the lottery. That's why curvature gets you risk aversion, that you would rather have the expected value for sure than the lottery. Risk neutrality just means you don't care about risk. You don't care if it's the expected value for sure. You don't care if it's the lottery. Risk seeking means you'd rather have the lottery than the expected value. That's what curvature gets you. That's why you get both. You kind of get two things with one assumption in standard utility models. You get the fact that the second piece of cake feels less good than the first piece of cake, diminishing utility, and you get risk aversion because of this property. Now, here's what economists assume about utility, is that it's defined over wealth. What does wealth mean? It doesn't mean what's in your pocket right now. It doesn't even mean what's in your bank account right now. Wealth is all the money that you have in all of your assets right now and all of the money that you stand to earn in the future. This is the discounted wealth as well. So when you're given a lottery to make a decision, whether 110 or losing 100, you're basically saying, look, I want my wealth. For all of you in the room, wealth is a very large number, by the way, very large, right? So you say that large number, 50% of that large number plus 110, or 50% that large number minus 100. Do I want that, or do I want to just stick with what I have? Here's what that means. You take that big curve over all of wealth, you zoom into that curve, and that little teeny 110 versus 100, that's a teeny tiny little perturbation on that curve. And if you zoom in into a curve, what happens, and if I had a board I could show you, it's linear. It's locally linear. Curves are locally linear in the sense that essentially over small amounts, you should be risk neutral. That's what linearity implies. So what this paper shows, what this chapter shows, is that expected utility, the standard model of utility, implies that you should never turn down small gambles if the expected value is positive. If the expected value is positive, expected utility says that you should be risk neutral because that's too teeny tiny of a perturbation. on that curve. So you should take that gamble. And if you turn down that gamble, you can do what's called a calibration exercise. It's to say, if you turn down this gamble, I know something else about you. That means you're going to turn down a gamble, and I think I'm going to get the numbers wrong.
250 billion.
250 billion win
I just read it.
with 50%, or like losing $200 or something like that.
Right.
So who would accept the 50-50 gamble, where if it's heads, you get 250 billion, and if it's tails, you lose $200? Okay, everybody takes it. That means you are not an expected utility maximizer. That's what the calibration theorem says.
If you turn down the first one.
Yeah.
So let me add one thing about that. I think most of the things we study are things economists or psychologists discovered and kind of make fun of the people. This one is a mistake economists continue to make. You pick up any economics journal and you'll search on risk aversion, and a lot of the times they'll use that phrase inappropriately. In seminars, I call these crimes against Rabin, because they're ignoring the fact that, no, you can't call that risk aversion if the stakes are small. And here's a bit of free advice. Anytime you're offered an extended warranty, say no.
That's a one-liner.
I think that is definitely worth the price of admission, which was nothing actually for today. So,
Hence
okay.
hence the full room.
Yeah. Well, thank God we're above that. You know.
I didn't need a curve for that. Okay, so Richard, this is a question for you. When you were updating this book with Alex, were there any new insights that you were really eager, because you had this opportunity, right, to incorporate? Or, I mean, has your mind changed in any fundamental ways about anomalies in general or anomalies in particular since you wrote the original Winner's Curse?
Well, you think I remember? I mean, I don't even remember the punchlines in this book.
Well, you can make it up and we won't know.
Yeah, no, that's true. I don't know that I've changed my mind about things much, but so let me do what students do, is answer a different question.
Or what politicians do.
Yeah. I think the big change and that you get when you're reading this book is the shift from experiments to the field. And, you know, when I started, my idols were Kahneman and Tversky, and they ran experiments. So I ran experiments, and psychologists ran experiments. But then, you know, you get big data sets. And, you know, one of the lessons in the book is about loss aversion. And one of my favorite studies of that is from our colleague Devin Pope, and it applies to golf, that I happen to like.
You love, yes.
So in golf, there's a completely arbitrary number that's assigned to each hole called par, which is what good golfers would expect to get on this hole most of the time. Hackers, less so. But in a tournament, par is irrelevant. The only thing that matters is the total number of strokes you took during the day. What Devin found when people are putting, so that's the last strokes on the green, sometimes they could be putting for a birdie, which is 1 under par. That's a win. Or they could be putting for par, which means if they don't make it, they're going to be losing. But that distinction is irrelevant, right? It's just the sum of the strokes that matter. And what Devin found is professional golfers make more of their par putts than their birdie putts because they're worried about losing if they miss the par putt. And it's still just 1 stroke. And Devin, who's the master of graphs, there's a graph where you just see a jump. And, you know, this is a data set with 12 million, I don't know. It's a lot of putts. And, you know, he controls puts from exactly here to there. So anyway, that's the big change in the field in the 30 years.
Okay, so Katie, do we have time for, I think we should go to audience questions. Is that cool? Good?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, good. So, so this is how it's going to work. We are going to have two mic runners. Can you raise your hands, mic runners? Do you see them? Okay, can you stand up then? Actually, Kevin and, oh, there's Wilkes. Okay, good. So raise your hand if you have a question, and we are going to try to be spatially egalitarian. So we're going to try to go on all, and we're going to try to have a mic in someone's hand at all times. So please raise your hands now if you have a question, and either Kevin or Wilkes will come find you. So Q&A. All right, good. So Wilkes, you guys, I'm not picking anyone. You guys pick. Okay, good. And we'll start down here. And then we're going to go until just before the end of the hour, and then we'll make some announcements. And please introduce yourself.
Oh, hi, I'm Michael McCarthy, MAP 16, so thank you for being my professor, and thank you for the talk. Now that you've written the book, and you know so much more than the average person, in your daily life, do you see people doing things that really frustrate you, and you wish they would do something differently? What would that be?
Go on Robinhood, trade daily options. Yeah, I mean, I think it's, you see that once you read the book and you study behavioral economics, you start seeing behavioral economics everywhere. So, you know, when you're confronted with an option to donate to a charity and something is pre-clicked for you, instead of nothing. So this is a status quo bias effect, where essentially before, like, so one of the studies that's in the book is on retirement savings. So before opting into retirement savings, you actually had to opt into the program when you started your job. So Bridget, Madrian, and Shay, they wrote a paper showing that, look, instead of having the default be that you're not in the program and you actually have to opt into the program, let's make the default you're in the program and you could opt out of the program, right? For a standard economist, look, this is an incredibly consequential decision to whether to save or not, whether to contribute or not to a 401k plan. The fact that one option is clicked versus the other should not matter, but this led to an incredibly large increase in retirement contributions. So this is called the default effect. What is the default? And once you learn about the default effect, you see it all the time. So I just recently learned that, for example, in about 2011, when Facebook started kind of ramping up, trying to grow as fast as possible, what they did is you used to, whenever you logged into Facebook, you would have to, you know, they would ask you, which of your contacts do you want to invite to Facebook? In 2011, they did something else. The default was that all of your contacts are invited to Facebook. And then you could opt out if you wanted to. Almost nobody opted out, and their network exploded as a result. So once you kind of see these sorts of things, you see it kind of all the time.
Where's where's the next mic?
Whoever is going to stand up if you have the mic, then we can see you.
Introduce yourself, and also shout out to the Masters of Applied Positive Psychology folks who are in the house. Yeah, go ahead.
Excellent. Well, I'm a graduate of the MBDS program. We have a few of my folks here, but my question is, I guess it sounds like you were able to beat the winner's curse by having the exclusive rights with that SPAC deal, which sounds like a great idea for folks like you who can get into a SPAC situation. But like, do you have any like advice for the average person who just learned that we should never get into auctions, basically?
Yeah, I mean, suppose you're shopping for a condo and there's a bidding war. Move on. So whenever there's you want to be a seller when there's a bidding war, and you don't want to be a buyer.
Okay, great. Mike is getting passed here. Yeah. Go ahead, stand up and introduce yourself.
Hi, guys. Will Russ. I'm a second-year MBA student. Thank you so much for your time. When you talk about the kind of idea of this disconnect between now and later, the SEC has recently proposed relaxing reporting requirements under the context of maybe some decisions are made that are poor in the short term. I'm curious if you think that shifting from a quarterly to a semi-annual model will actually change anything in terms of how companies operate and the decisions management make.
I spent a lot of time talking to people in financial services business. I think the consensus is wouldn't make any difference.
Why?
Because, first of all, lots of data gets released anyway. And if it's twice a year, 4 times a year, I don't think it would make a big difference.
Is there a time where it would? Like how long would the cycle need to be?
Well, yeah, I guess, it depends on how much information the firm is releasing anyway. And I think once a year there would be more surprises. So, but you wouldn't want weekly. And as a general rule, as investors, the more often you look, the worse you do. Poor Alex was stuck on a financial news network this morning that
CNBC.
that I escaped. I was on one of those shows like 20 years ago, and they asked, tell them what should our viewers do to become better investors? And I said, switch to ESPN. And they switched to a commercial. And I haven't been invited back, which is perfect.
There's a discussion about that right now. So about private equity and things like that they release, that they're less risky, right? Well, the reason that they're less risky is because they release information much, much slower. And this slow release of information aggregates. So you're seeing a lot less. It's still going up and down all the time. You're just not seeing it.
Part of the reason universities have had a big shift into investing in things like private equity is Cliff Asness, who we spoke to 2 days ago, calls this volatility laundering. That the market's going like this, but the only price information you get is when you sell the thing. And so if its value sunk, but you didn't sell it, it's invisible. So I go back to watch football, not the stock ticker.
Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you for coming this evening. My name is Ben Zaps, and I'm a third-year undergrad concentrating behavioral economics. And as you look back over these last 25 years, you see how the field has grown and evolved. You've seen a lot of papers about nudges, a lot of papers about prospect theories. What do you think of the field now? What do you think is the next direction, and what direction would you like it to go into?
Well, I'm the then guy, so that's a now question.
I think what you're seeing in behavioral economics now is actually, so we had this conversation yesterday, that the field kind of started with this idea that psychologists would really be collaborating first order with economists in behavioral economics. So the field started with 2 psychologists collaborating with an economist. But as the field kind of progressed, most of the papers, essentially all of the papers in behavioral economics, in economic journals, were published by teams of economists. And I think what we're seeing now, the last literally 5 years, which I've been a part of personally, is going back to this idea that, look, let's take the psychology seriously and let's think about modeling the specific cognitive constraints that people are under. And let's see what we can do with modeling limited attention, limited memory, a limited ability to process information, the speed of information processing. Let's model that. So that's the constraint. And let's put that into the information environment that people face. What does that sort of model get us? And it turns out what it gets us is anomalies. It gets us things like loss aversion. It gets us things like probability weighting. And the other thing that it gets us is a lot more predictability for when these things will emerge, when they're going to be larger, when there's going to be smaller. So I think, to me, what I'm personally most excited about as far as where behavioral economics is going is, on the one hand, I'm absolutely a huge fan of the fact that behavioral economics is going even further into the field. So I have a paper looking at institutional investors, so not just retail traders, but people with $1 million, sometimes $1 billion portfolios, showing that the smartest money in the market is still making mistakes. But at the same time, I'm also interested in like the really, really micro modeling of how people make decisions. And that research has really been bringing psychologists back into the fold. So I run a workshop in June where 50% of the audience, 50% of the contributors to the workshop are cognitive psychologists. The other are economists, and we're presenting papers to each other and co-authoring with each other and building models and making progress. So I think there's a lot of room. I think I'm really excited about this direction.
We're going to go over here, but while we pass the mic, would you argue that that is a reciprocal contribution of economics to psychology, having benefited so much from psychology being imported into economics?
Yeah, you see a lot more of that. You see psychologists, cognitive psychologists, social psychologists coming up with models that are more that are closer to what they've seen in their lab and using actually mathematical models, constrained optimization, and kind of borrowing some tools from economics. And now everybody's kind of speaking the same language, and we can really go.
Cooking with gas. Okay, where's the, yeah.
Hi, my name is Charity. I read Nudges. I really loved it, and I'm really excited to read the new edition of this. And I was just wondering that given that you guys have been in the field for so long, what are some of the behavioral anomalies that you find yourself falling into pretty often, even though like you do kind of know better?
I can answer for both of us. All. You know, Amos and Danny used to say that they didn't study anything unless it worked on themselves. And I think that's kind of the way all psychologists, all good psychologists work. You know, you look out the window. And so, you know, like Katy's idea of fresh start starting at the beginning of the year, that doesn't come out of some theoretical model. That comes out of the fact that, well, gee, why are people asking about New Year's resolutions? Maybe there's something special about that. So, yeah, open your eyes.
Also, you admitted at the beginning to the planning fallacy befalling you on this.
Yeah.
I know
We
that didn't
discuss
make
it.
it into the book, but
No, we talk about it. We say, I think so.
it's not in one of the chapters.
No, it's
in the
not a
opening.
type. It's right. Yeah, but yeah, we believe in it.
Yeah, right. So
But I
we
mean,
think things
This
will
book
take
was
less time
6
than
months
they do.
away
Yeah.
I
for
think-
5 years.
I think anybody who doesn't fall victim of the planning fallacy, except for Cass Sunstein, doesn't write a book. If you know how long it's going to take, you're going to quit.
After reading The Winner's Curse, would there be any detectable difference in one's life, do you think?
Oh, you'd be much smarter. I mean, much
I
smarter.
think, is there a mic? Let's see, are we? Yeah. Okay, whoever is supposed to go next. can
Yeah,
go.
there's
Yes,
somebody.
Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you.
I can hear you anyway.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for doing this session. I'm part of the MBDS course, but I'm new to behavioral science. And I've always wondered why the gym membership phenomenon doesn't work as a commitment device versus, you know, having someone, a partner as a commitment device. I understand it could be part of like the mental account decoupling, but shouldn't the sunk cost fallacy force you to have that commitment to the gym membership? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, look, the sunk cost fallacy probably helps, and people think that it's going to help. You know, you can, the amounts of money can be small. So like signing up for a specific class that's going to cost $20, you feel bad if you miss it. But, you know, if you're too good about, well, that's just sunk costs, then it won't work. So, I mean, it's kind of a weird example where people are using one fallacy to deal with another one. And I don't know what it tells us that.
But also the social part is very behavioral as well. So the fact that, social pressure works so well. So if you talk to people with a personal trainer and ask, like, why is that so effective? Like, yes, the person will tell you how to lift a weight and, run in a circle. But the biggest thing is that feeling bad for not showing up. Imagine, like, there's a person waiting for you at the gym at 12 and you're like, I don't feel like it. They're just going to wait there and look at the clock. They're going to be disappointed in you. And then people get out of bed, they make it to the gym. So really that the kind of social aspect of human behavior, that's also been really, really missing from economic models as well, about like how people feel about the opinions of others, social pressure, FOMO. There's a really nice new paper about social media and FOMO showing that why are people on social media even though they're so unhappy? And the result is that people would say they're actually willing to pay money. So Facebook and TikTok, they're completely shut down and destroyed as long as it's destroyed for everybody else. But they would pay $1,000 to stay on it if everybody else stays on it, right? Is this a welfare improving platform? I'll leave that to
on that very important question. So Angela and I conferred about how we wanted to close. What's the most important final question we would have? So we're gonna wrap the Q&A from the audience, and we're gonna have the last word. And I think the big question in our minds is, despite the enormous success in many regards of the field of behavioral economics, right? We're all here talking about it. There's so much excitement. We've got a couple Nobel Prizes, more to come. One for Alex is surely in the works. So despite that, we still see that economists are using their standard optimizing model. They're not, using prospect theory, which incorporates loss aversion and, probability weighting. They're not using hyperbolic discounting typically, or some of the new sophisticated cognitive models you were mentioning. So why is that? Why hasn't behavioral economics made enough inroads that this is crowding out those standard things? What do you think?
It's too hard.
So it's an anomaly.
Well, no, it's not an anomaly. So the easiest mathematical models to write down are of people doing it optimally. In a high school calculus class, you learn take first derivative, set it equal to 0. That's the maximum. That's an easy model to write down. Figuring out what people are doing, like imagine trying to model somebody going through a large grocery store, choosing the things to buy for a family for a week, right?
Substituting an easy problem for a hard one.
Yeah. And now, Danny used to talk about that. I knew there was a sly reference to Danny there. So Kahneman wrote about this in Thinking Fast and Slow and elsewhere, that people often just do that. They have a hard problem, they'll substitute an easy problem.
Substitution framework.
Yeah, and that's what I did on one of your questions, right?
Well done.
So
Danny would be very proud of you.
Yeah. So writing down, solving maximization problems is easy. Figuring out what else to do is hard. That's, as you know, how we end the book, is to say we think the next big problem is how do we figure out what's hard, what's difficult. And it's one thing we're sure of is it's not the number of steps it takes a computer to do it. Because there are some problems, many of you have probably heard of the bat and the ball, that's a problem that a first grader has the tools to solve, but half of students get it wrong. So, but what makes something difficult and when will we not be able to maximize? I mean, that's some of the problems that Alex's gang is working on, but they're difficult problems.
But it feels like there's a little irony here in the fact that the the model of economics is that we're perfect optimizers and we can handle any kind of level of complexity. And the reason economics hasn't actually become a good, accurate descriptive model is because economists are too lazy to use the good descriptive model.
Well,
But I think there's something to be said about, taking some of the blame to ourselves as well. I think there needs to be a conversation amongst behavioral economists of what are we going to tell a labor economist? What are we going to put in a labor chapter or something like that? So I think there should be more conversations between. So we end the book by talking about textbooks. So I got my BA in 2007. There was no behavioral economics in my micro textbook. I teach economics now. I have seen economic textbooks. They have no behavioral economics, maybe a little box. In some textbooks, there's a little red box that say, yeah, maybe this is wrong. But let's keep going. And that I think is the big problem. I think you can go through an entire education as an undergraduate and come out with perfectly competitive market equilibrium, perfect optimization, rational expectations and everything like that. And you come out into the real world and you see people buying meme stocks. So it's I think it's something that behavioral I think that's on us as well.
Before we end, first, I would love to have a round of applause for Alex Imas. Definitely been a blessing and not a curse. Most of you are still of the age to be called promising. So we hope you've enjoyed this Behavior Change for Good event. I want to say that if you receive something that looks like this, we'll wave it around, by the way, lucky you. You will have a free signed copy of The Winner's Curse that you can obtain right here at the table over there. Richard and Alex, I know you're not able to stay for questions, but we do want to thank you. I do want to say, for those of you who especially enjoyed today's event, there is a new event coming up very soon, Monday, November 3rd, with Professors Judd Kessler and Corinne Lowe, home team, right here in this auditorium. And that will be a discussion of how economics can help you get more out of life. So thank you so much. And again, one more round of applause and have a great afternoon. Thank you.